This will now delve into the middle section of Chapter 1. One of the most important concepts that we'll learn through the semester is a concept called customer relationship marketing. Sometimes this is called customer relationship management, and the acronym is CRM. The idea behind customer relationship management is that firms should systematically track their individual customers' purchases over time with the idea of tailoring offers to the individual customer. The premise of CRM is that it is much cheaper for a company or an organization to keep its existing customers happy rather than to constantly be focused on acquiring new customers. This is a really important point because many companies spend quite a bit of money on advertising and promotional gimmicks to attract new customers. And while they're doing that, they're really not focused enough on providing excellent customer service to retain their existing customers. In fact, sometimes you as a customer might feel that you're not getting the best offers that a company might have in the marketplace because you're already a customer. And there's nothing more irritating that I can see than when all these deals come through and then the deals say only new customers are eligible. That is the antithesis of CRM. CRM is also based on the premise that not all customers are created equal, and this is a really tough premise for marketing because our society is based on being very egalitarian, at least in theory, and at heart one might wonder, why is $1 from one particular customer perhaps more valuable than $1 from another customer? And the way that this is explained is through something called the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule also goes by the name the Pareto principle, where the word Pareto is spelled P-A-R-E-T-O. The 80-20 rule, or the Pareto principle, says 20% of a firm's customers account for 80% of its revenue and profit. And this is essentially a general guideline or rule of thumb. And it holds true across most organizations, although the ratio isn't always 80-20. So let me give you just a couple examples of the 80-20 rule in practice. A few years ago, the hard liquor industry was struggling because its data showed a 10-90 ratio. 10% of customers accounted for 90% of hard liquor purchased. And oftentimes these were the more elderly people in society who had grown up in the 70s and 80s, where the idea of a triple martini lunch was common in business. And as the distilled spirits or hard liquor companies realized that the majority of their purchases came from an older segment of society, they had to renovate their marketing to reach out to a younger target market. In the fast food industry, the general ratio shows 60-40. 40% of customers account for 60% of the volume of purchases at fast food. Now, that might not seem like a very skewed ratio, but what the data show is that those 40% of customers who account for 60% of the volume spend nearly $40 per week at fast food restaurants. Another statistic is 30-70. When you use a frequent shopper card at a store like Safeway or Albertsons, the preferred shopper, 30% of customers at a given store account for 70% of the purchases at that individual location. And what this means from a marketing perspective is that as long as a company understands the purchasing needs of those 30% of their quote-unquote heavy users, those high-volume customers, then they have a better idea of what to stock on their shelves and what they might need to replenish more frequently. CRM means that companies need to have software in place in order to track these purchases. Another component of marketing today is a focus on what is called marketing metrics. Sometimes this is called ROI, return on investment, and sometimes it's also called ROMI, R-O-M-I, return on marketing investment. Marketing was often criticized for being a soft area of business, and if somebody asked an advertising manager, well, how do we know what the effectiveness of those ads were? It was pretty common to say, I know half of my ads work, I just don't know which half. Marketing is increasingly quantitative, and the idea is to get hard data in order to assess the returns from marketing expenditures. In fact, there's a phrase that we hear in business today, which is that marketing is the new finance. In other words, marketing people must be quantitative and understand the financial impact of their decisions if they're going to be successful. This is actually very exciting because it puts marketing on a more equal footing with other functions in the organization, and it allows finance and accounting people to interact with marketing professionals in a way that they can all understand the lexicon. As we go through the semester, we'll see that marketing is increasingly quantitative, and even with respect to the triple bottom line covered on the first segment of this podcast, there is a new field of social and environmental accounting to capture not only the economic bottom line, but also the social and environmental bottom lines as well. We in the business school are very excited to be offering in the spring of 2014 our first course in this exciting area that will be open to all business students and not just accounting majors. In order to understand the quantitative impacts of marketing, we are going to be relying in this class on one equation through the whole semester, which essentially is profit equals total revenue minus total costs. And this is something that should be the mindset of how a business person thinks. Essentially, total revenue is going to be the price that we charge for our goods times Q, the quantity or units that we sell. And from that revenue, we must subtract our fixed costs, which are the overhead, the costs we incur even if we sell nothing, such as plant and equipment. And then we also have to subtract out the variable costs of doing business. So those variable costs are going to be the costs incurred to produce each unit. So if I'm making a car on a production line, the variable costs would include things like the tires, the glass, the electronic control modules. And I multiply those variable costs times each unit that I sell, and then I have to subtract those out from my revenue in order to compute profit. This is a basic equation that we'll be using all semester. In summary, in this newest era of marketing, moving into the era of the triple bottom line, not only do best practices marketing professionals today understand the triple bottom line, but they also follow CRM, and they also use marketing metrics to quantitatively assess their returns from marketing activities. When we talk about marketing, marketing can be applied to nearly any good or service in our society. Marketing is for serious goods and services, for example, the nuts and bolts that keep our airplanes in the air. to fun things such as Lady Gaga and all of her exciting fashions. The definition of a product from a marketing perspective includes physical goods that you can take home, services such as getting a haircut or getting your teeth cleaned, or even ideas. For example, some of the ideas we see marketed today are don't do meth. That would be an idea, for example. Or always recycle. When you see marketing to benefit social causes, that's called idea marketing. Goods and services include consumer goods and services. This is often called B2C marketing, business to consumer. So when you go to Albertsons and you pick up your Keebler cookies, that would be B2C marketing. B2B marketing, business to business, essentially is when one company sells to another company. This could include when a company such as Spica Enterprises sells parts to the Department of Defense for the federal government. This could include when Keebler actually sells its products to Albertsons. That would be B2B. Marketing also includes nonprofit marketing. So in this particular case, it could be the United Way is reaching out to the business community in Missoula to support their initiatives. I already went over idea marketing. Place marketing is interesting. Think about the state of Montana. One of the most exciting things that we market is tourism and getting people to visit Montana to spend their vacation dollars. And in that sense, Montana competes with other tourist destinations. In addition, Montana has an advertising campaign as a desirable place for companies to locate. This is known as economic development, and our senators do quite a bit in terms of an economic development process. In fact, there's an economic development summit held in Butte each year. So that would be place marketing. People marketing could be for athletes, musicians, politicians. So marketing is a very prevalent activity in our society, and when marketers use the word product, they essentially mean all of these things. So don't always think of products as just being very specific, tangible items. When marketers talk about value, value essentially is always taken from the customer's perspective. And it's the benefits that a customer receives from buying a good or service. Now I've added in parentheses here relative to the price paid. I'd like you to know that there are different segments of customers, and some segments value benefits differently. For example, when you think of buying a laptop, some of us value functional benefits and we want to pay a lower price. But some customers value different benefits. For instance, if they buy a Sony or an Apple, they're looking for a different bundle of benefits and they're willing to pay a higher price, but the value they may receive is equivalent to what I might get from buying a lower priced product, because we value those benefits differently. A value proposition is a phrase that marketers use to summarize why a customer should purchase your company's product. This might be encapsulated in a tagline, but a tagline really is different than the value proposition. So the value proposition essentially is what differentiates my company's products from my competitors. So here what you see again is just a little more detail on the idea of value and value proposition, critical terminology. And of course, marketers have to make sure that they offer value. And the way that they do this is by providing a competitive advantage. The idea of a competitive advantage is something that allows a firm some sort of resource that allows it to have distinctive competencies in the marketplace. For example, these competitive advantages might come from ingredients that a company uses in its product. It might come from recipes, as in the case of Coca-Cola. It might come in terms of distribution, for example, in terms of bottling infrastructure. And the idea that a company has to think carefully about what it has that are unique competencies, unique resources that allow it to compete. These could also include patents and intellectual property. When marketers refer to their position in the marketplace, they actually are referring to how customers perceive their product. So think of if I say the word BMW versus Kia, Budweiser versus Heineken. Essentially, each of these brand names connotes perceptions in the customer's mind, and this is called the company's brand position. The formal definition of position is the image of the product in the customer's mind. And the customer's image is always relative to competitive options. We're going to talk a lot about competition when we get to Chapter 3. And this perception is based on important attributes or features. And those features can be objective, for instance, price or miles per gallon, but they could also be subjective, such as design or style. Brand personality can be an important part of a brand position, and we see companies such as Google really emphasizing their quirkiness compared to a company like IBM or Microsoft that has a very different brand personality. And I can't emphasize enough that it's the customer's perceptions of the product that affect their purchase behavior. So it's not so much what position the company hopes that it wants to have in the market, it's what the customer actually perceives that drives their purchase behavior. Within a company, there are many different tools that can be used to create those distinctive competencies, whether they're the ingredients on the inbound side, whether it's the internal operations, not only manufacturing and production, but also the research they do, how they do new product development. Companies can also create value through their distribution channel, which includes both logistics and partnering with retailers. And then, of course, all the things that they do at the touch point with the consumer, whether it's personal selling or customer service after the fact. As we go through the semester, what you'll see is that the marketing process is broken into 5 distinct components based on how marketers understand customers, how they create value, how they communicate value, and how they deliver value. So you'll see that this outline corresponds very carefully to the definition of marketing. As we go through the course, we'll find that there is a lot of engagement with consumers today, and oftentimes this is referred to as Web 2.0, where social networking and the use of the internet to connect with customers is a critical part of the company's strategy. This can be both beneficial when they engage consumers in positive ways, but it also means the company might give up some control over their marketing. In some cases, this can actually backfire. Marketing also has both good components, but certainly there's a dark side to marketing, and it's criticized. One of the most kind of negative aspects of marketing today are concerns about the way marketing contributes to consumer consumption of food and obesity, as well as things related to the consumption culture that marketing drives in our society. These are valid concerns, and we will be discussing and debating the goods and the bads of marketing. This ends the second component of the Chapter 1 podcast.